Hey, this is Pastor Matt, and welcome to Theology Thursday. Today we're asking the question, why God doesn't always answer our prayers with a yes. Why doesn't He always grant everything that we ask Him? And even like these things that seem like a really good thing to ask for, why doesn't He just do them? It'd be awesome if He would cure world hunger, if that there would be no war. I think we can all agree that those would be good things to pray for, right? Or that our loved ones would come to know Jesus. Those are good things to pray for. And yet God doesn't always say yes to those prayers. Sometimes He says no. And so we're asking that question, why that's the case. And we're going to do that by looking at a letter called 2 Corinthians. We've been in this for the last number of weeks, and we're looking at chapter 12, verses 7 through 10. But before we do look at that, I just want to set the context a little bit. Verses 1 through 6, Paul is kind of talking about this guy that he knows who was caught up to the third heaven. And that's so not the sky, not space, but this heavenly realm, the place where God dwells. Okay, kind of that idea. Paul's saying this guy was caught up there, and whether it's like in person or it was a vision, it's like, I don't know, but he heard things that can't be told, which no one may utter. And then he kind of talks as like, on behalf of this guy, I will boast, but on my own behalf, I won't boast, except for my weaknesses. And then he kind of just talks a little bit. And then it's like he has a little Freudian slip here. In verse 7, he says, so to keep me from becoming conceited because of the surpassing greatness of the revelations. It's kind of a weird thing for him to say this if he isn't the guy who actually went up to heaven. You know, for him to just hear something from someone else doesn't make it, there's no reason for him to become conceited because of that. But if he's the one who goes up to heaven, you could get why he might have the temptation to think more highly of himself than he should. So most commentators think that this is a little bit of a Freudian slip here. So verse 7, and this is 7 through 10 is the passage we're looking at. He says, so to keep me from becoming conceited because of the surpassing greatness of the revelations, a thorn was given me in the flesh, a messenger, an angelos, an angel, messenger of Satan, to harass me, to keep me from becoming conceited. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord about this, that it should leave me. But He said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then, I am content or well pleased with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Key a passage as we understand what it means to live life in this fallen world as believers, people who have been won to Christ and yet still struggle with messengers of Satan that beat us down, that harass us, and make life a ton of trouble. I kind of brought this up here, drew attention to the word that gets used here, angelos. Typically, if you have a word, if you come across the word angel in your Bible, it's this word that is being used. It's just a word for messenger. So you could have, like, if I sent someone with a message to someone else, that would be an angelos, right? And in Greek, at least. And so there's a sense here where sometimes we don't know if the author is speaking about a spiritual being, or if it's a messenger, or if it's like a metaphorical messenger here. That's the case with this passage. We don't know exactly what Paul is saying here, but 2 things to know is he's saying it's a messenger of Satan to harass me, and this thorn was given to him, and it's sort of this idea what we call a divine passive, that God is the one who is giving this thorn to Paul. It's not that Satan is somehow trying to overthrow Paul's ministry, as though there's like some sort of a battle between God and Satan, and they're kind of like battling it out. And the reason why Paul's having difficulties because Satan's kind of winning in this way. That's not at all what's going on here. That's not what Paul's saying. He's saying that this thorn was given to him by God. God is the one who is really making his life hard. And then we get into some problematic stuff here. Is if this is a spiritual messenger of Satan, is God sending a demon to ruin Paul's life? Maybe. Seems kind of weird, right? There's some uncertainty here, but it could also just be that like Paul has a physical ailment, and we might speak about physical elements or spiritual elements along these lines. Like I got this demon, it's this headache, this is bugging the snot out of me. You know, we might kind of like make a physical ailment take on a personality sort of thing. And that might be what Paul is doing here. He's just kind of using poetic sort of language to describe a physical reality that's bugging the snot out of him. We don't really know. But what we do know is that he pled with the Lord about this thing. He's like, please take this away from me. 3 times he does this. And yet the Lord gives him a direct word. It says, my grace is sufficient for you, for just power is made complete. It's made perfect in weakness. My power is shown. It's made real in your life through weakness. And Paul takes this message and he goes further and he says, so I realize that. And so now I am bearing these things gladly. I'm boasting about these weaknesses that God has afflicted me with, because as I am weak, then I am strong. I'm content with weakness. I'm content with insults from people, hardships, persecutions, all the things that are going wrong with me. I am taking them and I'm receiving them with a smile. Now, he doesn't say that he's seeking them out or anything like that, but he is saying that these things are from the hand of God. So we get to us and we consider our illnesses. We consider the things that are bothering us. So for us who believe that God is in control, that even Satan can't do anything that God doesn't say, you do that. That there is no cosmic battle going on between 2 rival forces. For people who believe that God is in control, we have to approach every calamity that we go through, every difficulty that we go through, not as a spiritual battle to be won against Satan, but rather something that God has placed into our hands. And we don't know why. You know, we aren't told exactly why we face difficult things in this world. Like, we do know why difficult things come to us, and our passage talks about that. God's power is made perfect in weakness. But we don't know each individual bad thing that happens to us. But what we do know is that God is content to use those things in this life. He used them in Jesus's life. And, you know, this was one thing that just really jumped out of the text as I was reading it this week. Here Paul is, he's got this thorn in the flesh, this spear that's bugging him. And he does what any believer can do and is called to do. So you go to the Lord in prayer. You know that like God has brought this upon you, but you still, as his son, can say, or his daughter, you can say, Lord, if it is your will, please take this from me. And that's what he does. And what he finds out that it is not within God's will to take that thing from him. That's the answer that he got. The answer was no. And for me, as I read this, I'm like, oh man, that sounds a lot like, you know, Jesus here. You know, in the Garden of Gethsemane, he prays as a son to the Father. He says, Father, if it is thy will, take this cup from me. Yet not what I will, but what your will be done. And God the Father says, no, you are going to drink this bitter cup that I've prepared for you. You are going to save humanity. And Jesus says, yeah, I'll do that. Similar sort of things happening here with Paul. And a similar sort of thing ought to happen with us. Like, there's reason for us to go to the doctor and to see if we can be healed through those means. If we're going through like a physical ailment, there's reasons for us to go in prayer, I think, first. But Also, different means to seek physical healing. God works through means. We should be very open to asking him and seeking out an answer to ailments that we have. But there is another possibility here that maybe there are some physical ailments that God has given to us so that we might learn something, or so that we might experience this fallen world for all that it is, and not be able to grow content with it. There's a lot of reasons why God might choose to not remove the suffering that we're going through, why he might not choose to answer yes to every request that we have, even these ones that seem to be so stinking good. God has way more insight into what is good for all humanity and for the universe. Now, this message that Paul is presenting in this passage is very different than a sort of message that's very prevalent today within American Christianity, and not just American, it's very present in Global South as well. It's kind of this charismatic faith healing movement that says that God's power is primarily revealed through great signs and wonders. So the way that you can see that God is real and that he is with someone is if there's a sign. So if they're speaking in tongues, or if there is a miracle that occurs at a meeting or something like that, someone prays and, arthritis goes away, something like that, right? And the question that I always have, it's not if God can do healing still, because of course he can. If he's God, he can do whatever he wants to do. My question is, why are all these miracles that take place in these settings so easy to replicate with a placebo? Why are they so easy to replicate with just a standard adrenal response? These psychosomatic healings that we see in various cults, we see these same sort of things in churches that are claiming that this is the power of God doing this. It's telling that we don't see miracles like a hand regrowing. In an age of high definition video, why have we never seen this? Why don't we see miracles like occur in the New Testament in these settings? That's my question. And again, I don't doubt that God can do miracles today. I pray for miracles for me. But to say that these things are always the sign of God, I would not go there. Because after all, if God's power is primarily revealed through signs and wonders, why isn't he making himself known through incredible signs and wonders that can't be disproven? That's kind of the big question. And I believe the reason why is he primarily isn't shown to be great through signs and wonders. Instead, he is shown to be great through our weakness. And that's not about him taking that weakness away and making us strong. That's not at all what Paul is saying in this passage. Instead, that he is strong in our weakness. It's not to remove our weakness, but to change the meaning of it. And if you think about what this is for the Christian, what do our weaknesses do? Our weaknesses make us long for Christ. Our weaknesses make us long for the new creation. Our weaknesses make sure that we don't think so highly of ourselves or of this world. Our weaknesses make us realize that we need Christ. Our weaknesses actually prove to be the greatest law message that draws us to the gospel. So yeah, are our weaknesses painful? Are they thorns from Satan in the flesh? Like, yeah, they are. And yet God uses them for incredible good in us. We would never desire heaven if we didn't experience the futility of this world. So as a Christian, should we continue to pray for God to remove our weaknesses, for him to remove our thorns? Yeah, we actually should. We should do what Paul did here. We should do what Jesus did in the Garden of Gethsemane. But we also need to remember that God's answer might be no, and that no is still good. And so when God says no to our requests, it's not that he doesn't love us. Instead, he loves us so much, and he knows so much more than us that he's giving us exactly what we need. And for some of us, what we need is a really prickly thorn in some particular way, because that's what's going to draw us to Christ, and it might draw other people to Christ as well. So that's why God sometimes doesn't answer our prayers with a yes, but with a no. So that's it for Theology Thursday. I hope that this was a blessing to you. And I know this kind of sounds a little bit like cold comfort if you're really going through it right now. It can be such a messenger from Satan, really, to be going through a physical issue or to be going through a spiritual issue in some way. And I'm sorry if that's the case for you. I pray that you would cling fast to Christ in these times. I pray that you would see the weakness that you have right now, that you would call out to the Lord for deliverance, and know that sometimes that deliverance doesn't look like how you want it to be, but that ultimately God has promised to deliver you and give you the kingdom. And so go with that and be comforted in this Christ who experienced the thorns for you. All right, bye now.